Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. This book, it's written by Solomon, the son of David, of course. But this book, Ecclesiastes, it's actually, I think it's my favorite book of the Bible. And there's a reason. You know, after I graduated from college and was working as an engineer, this was a book that really helped me to kind of put things in perspective about what life is about and what's the point of things. It's one of the ways that God really led me to see also the importance of evangelism. And also kind of, in a way, led me to become a pastor, actually. So for me, this is a book is a very good one, very important to my life. It's a book that really, it helps you kind of take a step back from things. Take a step back from what you're going through in your life and kind of have a more objective view of things. You know, our lives are full of distractions, they're full of routines and things, and a lot of these distractions, they really keep us busy. And they keep you from realizing, ultimately, from what life is really about. Because you're always just focused on what's in front of you and this distraction, you know, trying to use your time in this way, but we don't really take the time to stop and think, you know, what is the point of life? What is the meaning of it? What is it all about? Part of the problem is we get trapped in these routines. You know, you wake up in the morning, you go to school or work, you're there all day, you come back, you eat dinner, and then you go to sleep, and then the next day you wake up, and it repeats. Day after day, week after week, year after year. It's the same routine that repeats. It's this cycle that continues on and on and on. And of course, though, there's highlights to your life. You know, there might be a time when you get married, you know, you have a family, you have children, you know, you spend time with your friends, having fun, going on trips and things. But also in their life, there's also those low times where, you know, you face a problem, a difficulty, or there's a crisis that comes in your life. But ultimately, things go on. Things continue day after day, year after year. And one day you're going to wake up, and you're going to be 70 years old, looking back at your life, and you're going to think, you know, where did my life go? You know, what was I doing the entire time? What does the wise teacher from the book of Ecclesiastes say regarding life today? As we read earlier, he says, meaningless. Everything is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. You know, back when I was an engineer in America, before I came to Korea, I used to get stressed out from work all the time. My boss, he was a perfectionist. And everything that I designed or built, it not only had to work really well, but it had to look really well. Because that's the type of person he was. Our plant that I worked in, it was an automotive injection molding plant. It was perfect. It looked very clean on the inside. Even our floors, it wasn't just concrete floors. We had this special latex we used. And everything was, you know, had lines and places to place everything. You couldn't have junk anywhere left out. It had to be marked off or taped off in some way, even if it was just for a day. It was because it was his personality. He was a perfectionist. And our plant was used for modeling, for other people from other plants to come. And ours was like a showroom of how it should be, of how things should be done. And so because of this, you know, I had tons of stress. And I had all these deadlines that I had to follow, you know, projects that were very difficult, especially for my first year out of college. It was very stressful. You know, I would be so stressed out from things that I couldn't sleep at night because I was always worried about things, and I would have panic attacks. So my heart would be beating really fast, and I'd try to go to sleep like that, and it just wouldn't work. And it wasn't just that, but you know, also it was kind of terrible because working inside a plant, especially during the winter time, you never see the sun. Now, I would go to work in the morning at like 5:30 a.m. because we had like a 6:30 a.m. meeting. And then I would get home, I would leave work at like around 5:30. So during the wintertime, you know, there's no windows in the plant. So I'd go and it'd be darkness going to work. I'd come home, there's darkness. It was very depressing. It was very difficult. But as I was going through that, someone would always tell me the same thing. Whenever I was just stressed out by something, he'd be like, why are you so stressed? It's just car parts. Don't worry about it. It's just car parts. I say, oh yeah, that's good, that's good. But I got these deadlines. I gotta meet this. I gotta do this. I even had to lead this early morning meeting, for all the departments. And I was just like this young kid out of college, and these people were 2 or 3 times my age, but they were reporting to me, and so it was so much pressure all the time. But the thing is, everything changed one day. The moment that I truly came to understand the gospel, everything changed. And even the words of my friend that was always telling me, hey, it's just car parts, it's just car parts. It finally hit me what that really meant. And after reading, things like this book, Ecclesiastes, it kind of put things in perspective for me. Everything is meaningless and chasing after the wind. We're all chasing after something in life. A lot of us were chasing after success or recognition. I think deep down, we all desire to really make a name for ourselves, to receive recognition of who we are. And that's what it is, chasing after the wind, because it always seems to elude us. It's something that comes and goes with time. It's fleeting. It's not lasting. Even when we have times of making money, there's ultimately no satisfaction. The more you make, it seems like the more you want to make. It's never enough to truly satisfy. So when it came to my designs and projects and the stress I had every night, I came to realize this. Everything, it has a time. Everything has a time, and then later on, ultimately, it's replaced. It's replaced by something new, something better. And that's what history teaches us. If you study history, you'll see that. There's a time for everything, and it gets replaced by something else. And we see great empires of the past. They were huge. They had nations, great buildings and great structures, magnificent things, huge armies. They would come and go. They'd get conquered. They'd get replaced. New things would always replace the old. Technology teaches that as well. Advancing in technology means that no matter what you create, no matter what you make, one day it's going to be replaced with something better. Nothing lasts forever. So for me, all my designs, all the stress that I was going through, all those things would be replaced. All the work that I toiled to do would all vanish. All things are temporary. Nothing lasts. Or in the words of my friend, it's just car parts. It's not life and death work that I was doing. If something was late or something wasn't perfect, it's not like I was going to die because of that. It wasn't going to affect my life. But that's the feeling that I have. Because that's the race that we're in for success. It's this huge pressure on us to be the best. And that's what I felt. Why was I so stressed? It's because I wanted to be perfect. In everything that I did, everything I made, I had to be perfect. Achieving success, not making mistakes, not having any failures. Maybe making others proud of me or receiving recognition. Some people call it a rat race that we're all in. It's very competitive. We're trying to make a name for ourselves among the crowd, to stand up, to be noticed. But the question is, are any of those things that we're trying to achieve, all those things, are they of any value? Sometimes I think back about the things from long ago. There's a lot of people that created many things, invented many things. Things that we even use today. Think about the pens that you're using to write your notes down with, or your pencils, or even the paper that you're writing on. Do you know who invented those things? We use them every day. They're great items. The person that made the pencil or the pen, we should recognize who that is. But do you know who it is? Because I don't. Even things like the TV, the computer, even other things, the toilet, your refrigerator, the sink. Who made these things? You'd think that we'd remember them because we use them every day. They'd make a name for themselves because of this amazing product that revolutionized the world. Especially things like the refrigerator. That thing is wonderful to have. Right? But who did these things? Did they make a name for themselves? Apparently not. But that's what we're striving for. We want to create or do something amazing, make enough money, so we'll be remembered. But a lot of these things It hasn't even been 50 years that passed since they were invented. And we don't even know who made them. What about things from 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago? How do you really make a name for yourself? What I'm trying to say is this. We are all striving, ultimately, I think, to make ourselves in some way immortal. And we do that through trying to make a name for ourselves. We want our name to be something that's lasting and printed on stone or somewhere so it lasts forever. Or maybe through our posterity, through our children, through their namesake and what they can do, through something. But the thing is, nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever except one thing. One thing lasts for eternity, that lasts forever. And that is the soul. When we die, there's nothing that we can take with us. Nothing at all. But one thing. Those that are saved children of God. That is a treasure. But do we know that? Do we realize that? Do we see the importance of that? I don't think so. Because every day we're filled with all these distractions, all these comforts. TV, internet, movies, going out having fun with friends, drinking, going to shows, clothes, cars, sports. We don't want to think about the truth because in the end it's kind of scary. We like to have these things that comfort us, to distract us. It comforts us and just the life that we have in many ways. So what gives us meaning? The words of this great Solomon, he had achieved everything that we could wanted to achieve. He was a great, king, lots of riches. Any desire that he wanted was his, and he had the greatest wisdom at the time. It's something that we strive to get to. But what does he say after achieving all these things? In the end of Ecclesiastes, it says this, in chapter 12, verse 13, "Fear God and keep his commands, for that is the whole duty of man." So fear God and keep his commands, for that is the whole duty of man. From birth to death, we have to remember we live under God. And that's important. With God. With God is where we find our meaning in life. Because everything else is meaningless. And that's the first point today. Everything is meaningless. Have you ever looked at just like an anthill outside? Solomon, there's this kind of example. Solomon, he kind of looks at mankind this way. It's kind of like this anthill where people are just striving. They're so busy. If you look at ants, they're so busy, toiling away, working to build this hill and the caves and do all this work. Working and striving in the pursuit of many things. That's how he sees mankind. We're like this anthill with ants. Laboring away in an effort to control our environment. To control their destiny. We're striving ultimately for this state of security because we want something called lasting happiness. It's always eluding us. We want lasting happiness. We want this security. Some people call it utopia. And I think that, evolution is teaching us, hey, you're all heading towards this time of perfection. Where everything's going to be perfect. Our society is going to be perfect. No problems, no hardship, no pain, no suffering. Everything's going to be perfect. That's the direction that we're headed towards. But what does Solomon say? All these efforts are meaningless. And one of the reasons is, fundamentally, we can't change anything. Of course, we can change the appearance of things, how they look, things around us. But inside, the fundamental things, they can't be fixed. This fundamental problem, we can't fix it. And the reason is it's rooted in sin. And sin, it's not about what we do. It's not about your actions. It's about your nature. It's because we have this nature of sin. And that's why, simply educating everyone doesn't make a perfect society. Because sin works its way into every system. It works its way in through greed, through pride. It destroys systems. There's corruption. Because it's rooted in sin. It's all meaningless. In chapter 1, verse 3, Solomon says, What does man gain from all his labors? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. In verse 9, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new for us. Generations come, they go. Our lives, they come and go. Things just keep going on again, again, and again. He says even wisdom is meaningless in verse 14. It says, I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Even pleasure is meaningless. In chapter 2, verse 3, I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. So I built houses, I planted vineyards, I made gardens and parks, made reservoirs, male and female slaves. I owned more herds and flocks than anyone. I amassed silver and gold, treasure of kings. I acquired singers, harem. He had over 700 wives and 300 concubines. He says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. And this is important in verse 11. Yet, when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. He says even toil and our work, our hard work, is meaningless. In verse 18, I hated all things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one that comes after me. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool, yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my efforts and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. What does a man get for all the toil and anxious striving with which he labors under the sun? All his days his work is pain and grief. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is meaningless. Now this is an important passage to think about. Everything that we do, everything that you might amass in this lifetime, all these people that are rich and famous, the thing that they always got to worry about is, who are they going to entrust this to? Who's going to come after them? Because of all this work that they did to achieve all these things, if the generation after them they entrusted to, they could just lose it all. It could just be broken, replaced. That's what happens. And the thing is, we toil and we stress out about these things. All of our hard work, it's just pain and grief, like he says. And at night, our minds do not rest. This was the state that I was in every day. And I came to the same conclusion. Working as an engineer, I had so much stress, panic attacks, all these terrible things, until I realized this truth. After me, someone was going to take my place at that company. They're going to be in charge of all those projects. And the same thing will happen for them. They'll just be replaced. All our toil and work, it never ends. Your entire life, your toil and work, it never ends. It just continues for mankind. We're going to continue working for the rest of our lives. And to the end of time, ultimately. And it says even riches are meaningless. In chapter 5, verse 10, he says, whoever loves money never has money enough. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And we find out, what is the source of all this toil? What is the source of our hard work? Why are we always trying to do this? In chapter 4, verse 1, he says this, and I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This is the conclusion he came to. All of our hard work, why are we striving to achieve so much for ourselves? It's because of jealousy, of envy. They have this saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. We are driven by jealousy. We're driven by envy. We're driven to have what others have. Even if it might not even be better than ours, we strive to have it as well a lot of times. That's what drives us, this competition to have it all. And so the conclusion of this is that everything is meaningless Because we're all following the same flow. This cycle, this routine, we all follow. Of course, there's good times and there's bad times within this. There's a time, ultimately, for everything. And that's the second point. In our lives, there's a time for everything. Chapter 3, verse 2, it says, there's a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill, a time to heal, tear down and build. A time to weep, a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. There's a time to love and a time to hate. There's a time of war and there's a time of peace. And there's times for all of these things. So we don't need to be surprised at this. But with our given time, with our given lot in life, we must find time to enjoy as well. So what is good for us? It says in chapter 5, verse 18, it is good for man to find satisfaction in his toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given him. For that is his life. That is his lot. To accept his lot and be happy in his work. This is a gift from God. So what is he saying here? He's saying just enjoy what God has given you. Be content with that. Rediscover the me that God has created. What is your identity? Discover what God has given you, your gifts, your talents. Even discover your field that God's entrusted to you. Find joy in these things. Be content in these things. It says in chapter 5, verse 20, he seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. You're not going to have time to regret or look back on these things if you're really content with what God's entrusted you, with what God's given you. Because your joy won't be the joy of these material things. Your joy will be the gladness that God gives you in your heart. So we have all these times for things, But we have to remember, our time here is not limitless. But it's important to realize this, especially at a young age. One of the greatest things to reflect upon is the fact that one day you're going to die. So sometimes it's good to imagine yourself at the end of your life, because we don't know when that day will come. Do you have a lot of regrets? Do you have a lot of things you feel guilty about? Did you enjoy the days that you had? Or were you constantly being stressed? Were you constantly consumed with achieving great things? Ultimately, we can't take anything from this life with us. So it's important to know that we will face an end. It says in chapter 7, verse 2, death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart. This is something that we should think about. It says in chapter 9, verse 12, moreover, no man knows when his hour will come. We are destined to die and face judgment. But the thing is, we don't know when that day is going to come. A lot of times we imagine our lives living, for later years, like we're going to live for a long time. But we need a time to reflect on, especially those that die young. And there's a lot of people that die at a young age. I know people that died at very young ages. When I first came to Korea, there was some that I met that's actually my age. When I first came to Korea, it was like 25, I think. And, he went to the hospital for some routine thing, and then a short while later, he just died. It was very shocking to me because, he was very young. We don't know when our time will come. It's important to realize that. Tomorrow could be that day. We could be walking outside our house and get hit by a car. We don't know when that day is going to come. So we can't wait until the end to live life the way we should. A lot of times we call these accidents that happen tragic. But the thing is, it's very common actually. Don't think about the things that you need to change tomorrow. Start today. Start changing things today, because we don't know ultimately what tomorrow will bring. And the third thing to remember is to really know God's sovereignty as well. In chapter 7, verse 13, it says, "Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. When times are bad, consider. God has made the one as well as the other." What this means is the good and the bad, God has ultimately allowed it. So it's important for us to trust God, to discover his plan, to seek his counsel within these things, and to know that he is sovereign. He's in control. The third point today is the final words of the teacher. And this comes at the very last chapter, chapter 12. And this is regarding how we really discover what is the meaning in life. These are the important things to remember. Number one, remember your Creator. It says in chapter 12, verse 1, "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Know God and your place in his creation." That is a valuable lesson, because this helps us keep everything else in perspective. If you know why you were created, to be in a relationship with God, and you know that he is sovereign over all things, it's important to know these things, to know how to live your life with purpose. The second thing he says in chapter 12, verse 8, is once again he's reminding us, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. He repeats this throughout this book. Meaningless, meaningless. And there's a reason. Because he doesn't want us to get caught up in the flow of the world too much. Our selfishness, our materialism, just seeking after success, worldly success. Ultimately, all these things fade away. It's all meaningless. Don't get caught up in it. Don't follow the flow of the world. And the final words that he gives us, chapter 12, verse 13, at the very end of the book, he ends it with this. "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commands, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil." So we see something repeated in a lot of these books that we've been covering. We went through Job, Psalms, Proverbs. All these are wisdom books. But we see something is repeated every single time in every single one of these books. What is true wisdom? Fear God. This doesn't mean be afraid of God, of course. But fear God is a respect for God, acknowledgement of God, acknowledgement for his kingship, for his sovereignty. In Ecclesiastes, it's put this way, fear God and keep his commands, for this is the whole duty of man. This is the point. And he adds a very important reason why we should fear God. Even though he's been saying everything is meaningless, it turns out there is meaning. There's meaning to your life. There's meaning to your actions. There's meaning in relation to God. This final verse, "For God will bring every deed into judgment," including every hidden thing. You can't hide anything from God. Even the motive of your heart. Every hidden thing, whether good or evil. And this means that everything is granted meaning. This grants meaning to everything that you do. Because he is creator, he is the moral lawgiver, he is love, he is life. In him, we find true life and our purpose. And so here's the conclusion that we come to. If we don't acknowledge the Creator, if we don't acknowledge the sovereignty of God, we're simply living like animals. We live without purpose. We live without meaning. There's no point to our existence even. Our actions, whether good or bad, whether it's evil or caring, whether it's murderous or loving, none of it actually matters. There's no point to any achievement. There's no meaning to any pleasure or pain, because there's no purpose to life. There's no point to life, because there's nothing that lasts. There's nothing eternal. If there's no God. However, if there is accountability, if there is justice, if there is life after death, if there is a creator with a plan, that gives us purpose in relation to him. Then we find our meaning. That's why the teacher is right. It's all meaningless because it all passes away. These things don't really matter, but your relationship to God does. And that's where we find our meaning. In your enjoyment and worship of our Creator. In conclusion, once again, looking at this final verse, for God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or bad. God is going to come to do this, because here we find the perfect judge, which is Christ. Christ will come to judge the living and the dead in the end. It says in Romans 1:20 that everyone will be without excuse at that time, which means that he will judge justly. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, it says that God has actually set eternity in the hearts of men, yet they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. We have the remains of immortality within each of us because we were created in God's image. We were created with God's Spirit. We have a taste of that immortality, and now we're separated from God. So that's why we're striving to get it back. That's why we strive to live forever, to make a name for ourselves, to do all these things because we want to live forever. That drives our advancement, ultimately our fear of death, which is all the result of that fall, that original sin and fall of mankind from Genesis 3. But it says here also in Ecclesiastes 3:11, it says, yet man cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Why does it say that? Because we have to remember God has a plan. From the beginning to the end, from creation to the fall to our redemption, God has a plan. God has given us a way. And there's only one answer in the end. Only one way to gain life. Only one way to gain eternity. And it's not through works. It's not through our toiling to achieve things. Ultimately, it goes against that. Because it's a gift. And we accept it through faith. In John 3:15 and 16, it says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. This is the gift that we've been given. Eternal life for those that believe through Christ. So finally, I'm just going to close with this. For those of you that are caught up in the world, I want you really to read through this book if you have time. Or at least remember the words of the teacher of Ecclesiastes. Because he achieved everything that we could want to achieve in life. And he had the greatest wisdom of the age. And after all those things, he came down to this conclusion. Ecclesiastes 2 verse 11. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and all that I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless and chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Don't chase the wind like everyone else. Don't chase after the world that fades. Discover Christ and gain everything, because you gain eternal life. Now, everyone dies. You have this one life, this one lot in life. So the question is, what are you going to do with the life that you've been given? That's what I want you to remember. What is the meaning of life? Let's pray together.